Welcome to Influential Visions. Here, we interview futuristic leaders who share their deep industry knowledge and business experience with you, ensuring you have your finger on the pulse and your eyes wide open. My name is Nathaniel Schooler, and I am your host today. Hello and welcome, and today we're going to be discussing a few interesting topics which have been in the news recently and are very, very important to what's going on in the technology industry, really. And today I'm interviewing a few different people. We're gonna try our luck with actually 4 people, including myself, on this podcast. And we've got Neil Cattermull. He is the CEO of The Future as a Service, and he's a seasoned tech industry analyst. I'm also joined by Tony Flath, who's actually a sales executive in telecoms with Shaw Business, and he's an engaged technology influencer as well. And I'm also joined by Sarbjeet Johal, and he has been working in the technology industry for the last 25 years. He lives in the San Francisco Bay Area. So yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. Hey guys, it's great to see you.
Good to see you too.
Good to see you too.
Real pleasure. So we're going to talk about 3 things. The first thing is we're going to talk about the latest move by the EU to discuss regulations around AI, and will that hamper innovation in this area and allow the USA and China to be ahead, obviously. The second thing is we're going to talk about 2020, the European organizations spending $271 billion on digital transformation, but only 16% are going to deliver new revenue streams. So we're going to discuss why only 16% out of that huge amount of money being invested is going to generate revenue. And
yeah, but
we're also
right. We're not part of Europe now, so do we care, right?
Well, no, but it's good. It's good to understand.
Go down, right? That's
No, we're not. No.
Yeah. Sarbjeet and I are way far out of Europe.
By 2025, 60% of European organizations are going to modernize their core IT, leveraging the cloud. Yeah. And so we're going to talk about the 25% business productivity improvement and where that is going to come from, according to you guys. Okay, so I'm going to start off with Neil, and we'll talk about the latest move by the EU to discuss regulation in AI. And I'm sort of wondering, what your views are around that, really.
Well, I think it's a lot wider than that, right? We're looking at companies in general being more regulated. Right across the board. When we talk about America, we talk about the US, and Sarbjeet will talk about more than that more in detail than I would. But in the whole EU thing, I think, we're going to discuss regulating AI. How can they? They don't even understand it themselves. If you ever gone into the government there, right? Yeah. And I'm sorry if there's people going to be listening here, work for the government, and certainly from the EU point of view, their systems are more archaic than everyone else's. And, that's just reeks to me a massive consulting gig for some of the big boys out there to tell them and go, oh, this is what we need to do. How are we going to do it? But, like with anything, everyone will have their bias, right? So, I can't see that even taking off, to be honest. It's too complicated.
Right.
It'd be like another failed project halfway through and canned,
Yeah.
That'd be my view on it.
Yeah. I mean, they've said that there's a 12-week period where they're going to think about it. Yeah. You can't research and think enough in 12 weeks to give any specific great information. Really, I don't personally think. That's my own feeling on it.
The only thing they can regulate is data scraping, right? And that's the only thing that they can sort out.
Yeah.
But when you talk about AI that connects to disparate other systems, right, and you've got data leakage all over the place, it's an impossible task, right?
Yeah.
The same thing we try to regulate the banking system, but there are always ways around it. And majority of the brokers and asset managers and stuff like that always find a way around it, and that's the most regulated industry in the world. And we try to do this with tech.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because there are so many more applications to AI than just data analysis, right? And that's the thing. They're focusing around that, aren't they? So what do you think on this one, Sarjeet?
I think from my background, I'm an economics major, and I used to study international economics and stuff like that. So I always kind of wear that global hat most of the time when I talk about these things. I think there's a lot more collaboration what we need to have at the international level. We have some international institutions like UNO and IEEE, some standard bodies and some regulators of some certain sort, if you will. They have like subdivisions under UNO with the committees and stuff like that. They handle technology sort of proliferation, if I can say that word right. So I think that we need to get there gradually. But in the meantime, we need a lot more collaboration between private and public within the countries. And of course, within regions also, like EU is like multiple countries, and they will have they have to consult with the different countries. And we know the UK is trying to get out, and but still they have to coexist with their neighbors and stuff like that. I think the biggest problem, this is how I see it, is in the military use of AI. Like, can you put a gun on a drone and shoot anybody anytime? Kind of like there's like a huge there's ethics kind of like that is very gray area. But the data usage is relatively speaking easier to handle. But then the ethics, like, can you take anybody's picture moving anywhere? And then can you upload that? Can you give it to the police? Can you give it to law enforcement? Those are AI-related big questions. I think that they will be unsolved for a while. But we need some international standards. Like most of us travel a lot, and then if we are in Shanghai and like we are getting taped all the time, and then that can go anywhere, anytime. So like, I think we need some international standards on all these fronts. And I think the regulators their job is challenging. They need to be more agile. They need to work with private businesses, especially in the more capitalist sort of countries or economies. They can do better collaboration. And in China, we know that they're kind of intermingled like this, government and
Sarji, I reckon, right, to bring this into a proper AI point of view, I wonder, some elements of this regulation are going to go in for job replacement with automation, right? So that's a real minefield, right? So they're going to spend some of this effort and work and go, wait, you know what? Is it ethically possible or doable, really, for introducing automation within your landscape to make a lot of people redundant? And where they're going to go, right? So I think there's a lot of ethics and standards around that, absolutely. Yeah. But I just can't see them getting any of that right. When they start talking about AI in industry and regulating, it's going to be more complicated.
Yeah. So what do you think then, Tony, about this?
Right. So I've seen some of this in Canada, and I know some from behind the scenes on the cybersecurity front, right? I think it's twofold. I think you've got one thing where you've got to regulate from a control perspective, right? So you've got to look at, like, I know in Canada, there's been some coordination at the government level on how they're going to use AI and how they're going to really better utilize security controls across the country to provide better, threat protection, really, right? Mm-hmm. So I think you've got twofold. I think you've got the bad actor situation where you've got to control some things. And then you've got, like, when you talk about AIs from a regulation perspective, that, like, I agree with you. That's a big, big spectrum to cover. Yeah. 12 weeks, what exactly are you covering? Because you've got a few points, right? Like, you've got artificial intelligence is really just part of it. Like, what about how those applications are deployed? You've already touched on it, a few of you, on privacy, on ethics. And it goes down to how that data is being utilized. I think there's bigger issues with bias, with inclusion, and how the skewed information is being pulled, and then what does that mean, right? Yeah. I don't know. It's a big can of worms. I mean, what are we, like, 20, 30 years into the internet, and, how much has really changed in the regulation side. It's just been open, kind of, free country, or like the Wild West, really, right?
Yeah.
And now we're seeing all this heavy duty advancement in capabilities, and where do you draw a line? 12 weeks, is that going to cut it? That's really
knee jerking. That's what I call it.
Yeah,
we're knee jerking, trying to
Yeah.
appease people, but we're going to rush it and make a complete dog's breakfast of it.
Yeah. Well, I think also. Sorry, go on, Sarji. You first.
Yeah, I think it's they might be trying to be more agile, and they have to do iterations. I believe that the regulators have to move at the pace of the change in technology. Like otherwise, like if we go the old style, like okay, they have to do study for 6 months, let's say, right? And then in 6 months, things move pretty drastically in the industry, right? And I think if they want to do it smart, they should do iteration like version 1.0, 1.1, 1.2 of
agile. Yeah, I agree.
Guidelines.
Yeah.
Like I think they should start with the guidelines before they start regulating. They can morph into some regulation, because regulation is like, once you do it, it's so hard to get rid of. That's the problem with the regulation.
Very true.
Guys, what do you all reckon about this and that? What do you think, mate, mainly? But, the UK, I'm not going to bring it back again. It's the last time I'm going to mention it, I promise, right? UK leaving the EU, right? And our government, I might add, and I made a big point on this on Twitter, our government are so anti-EU regulation now that we don't want anything to do with them, right? Really badly, like from the top down. So there's no way I think the UK will end up coming out and have their own set of privacy laws, one way or another, right? And I just think it's going to be very, very complicated to get them all linked together, from the US side of things, the Canadian side of things. Then we've got the British, then we've got the rest of Europe, right? And we've got all of this in the US side.
And China is
how
just
difficult that is to integrate.
Oh, exactly.
Handed with all of that.
Yeah.
And bad actor China, right? Like you look at all the bad actor, right?
I mean,
Tony, mate, the UK
we're not
China's best friend, mate. You watch, mark my words.
The ethics seriously need questioning, on what's going on over there. And I'm very, very worried about it, actually. And I think the issues that we've got is the US were like, oh well, we're gonna have all this AI, and we're gonna get into it, and we're gonna sandbox it, and we're gonna check out all these applications. But the Chinese were live a year before, so the Chinese are still a year ahead. I'm sorry, and
they are.
They're not saying anything, and the US are scared, so they're not going to innovate. They're not going to regulate because they don't want to stifle the innovations, and we've got serious problems, with how they're manipulating the population over there. And I don't like to speak out. I've been to China; they're lovely people, but I am seriously worried about the whole thing. Really.
Yeah, there's Russia.
I think there's a lot of damage being done to the technology companies and in general, like AI and all that stuff. All these discussions is under the national security and the privacy. So under the name of national security, we are like shoving a lot of stuff and let governments capture a lot of data. And we have NSA in the US, and then Chinese government is tapping every sort of switch and router out there. So I think that national security needs to be defined. Like what you need to know for national security, and can we have some like international bodies intervening? Like, hey, you cannot do this, you can't do that. At least some guidelines.
Well, and what about some minister of technologies or some political people of technology that have a better understanding? And I'll reference a referenced the Facebook when they went through that in the US, right? And they went through those trials and they had them up on going through all the questioning. There was such a poor grasp on technology at the political level. I think there certainly has to be some more ingrained technology knowledge just on how, things are evolving, because they are moving real quick, right? I mean, it was Sarbjeet, you watched all that. You were right there, right? Like, through all that, it was kind of a gong show.
Do you think though that it's because the American politicians are not allowed to have second jobs? and that way they don't actually have any information in their brains. No, seriously, because my dad, he's been on about it because he's American, right? And he's been on about this in England for ages. He complains about politicians being able to work 2 jobs. And it's like, well, they just go in, they punch their time card, right, and then they get outside, jump in the car, and nip off. But the thing is, if you want to keep up with the knowledge in technology, right, you need to have 2 jobs to be a politician, I reckon, and be in the business. Yeah.
But I'll tell you an interesting story about that, right? I used to work with and for someone who was should I even say this, right? Anyway, they were the shadow IT secretary for the UK, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was an MP, right? So they were the shadow IT MP for the UK, right? And he owned an IT company. And so, it's different over here, right? Because I think we're all allowed to do whatever we want, really. It's a bit odd, but
yeah, it's odd.
But yeah, I think personally Canada's leading the way with a lot of things with AI at the moment, because you've had that freedom to move.
Way to go, eh?
What's been going on, Tony? What can you explain that?
Because I know Tony's been going to the unis out there and
Well, and actually, it's a good point that you brought up on the unis, right? So the University of Alberta for a long time was, and this goes back, to Nathaniel's point, but you look at the University of Alberta for a long time was ranked in the top 5, even at the top inside, like even number 2 for artificial intelligence globally. They've done some really impressive stuff over the years with artificial intelligence. I met with one of the professors there, and I had actually shot a podcast with him and went through, questioning on that. And he really gave me some context and some things that really, really showcase and shine on this whole concern around China. China has rapidly advanced on this top list of our artificial intelligence. I feel personally that in Alberta and Canada, more money needs to be put in and driven into that emerging technology, especially with all the energy concerns and everything else on, renewable resources. And we don't need to get into all that. That's a whole other, a whole other podcast. But I certainly think that you're spot on. There's some concern there, right?
Yeah. I'm just worried about the way that they're using it to control people. Really, that's the thing. I mean, we all know that AI has been used in airports, in airport security for ages, right? Image recognition, behavioral analytics. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. So we need to set out a whole load of frameworks which just say, well, it's okay to use it this way, but you shouldn't be doing it that way, right? But it's still very, very early days.
I mean, I get it. We should have some kind of tech visa between each country that rules that they abide by, right? But that's going to take a long time to agree. I mean, the UK, I'm sorry, I've gone back on my word, took 3-4 years to leave the EU, right?
Yeah, completely. The horse was bolted, yeah.
So, but, we all slate China, right? But I personally cannot believe that they would ever manipulate data for their own gains to breach and potentially create the next world war electronically, right? Let alone anything else. They wouldn't do that, right? They wouldn't risk that. I'd be very surprised.
I don't think we know. I don't think I don't
what
know.
You boys think? I mean, do you think they'll risk?
But it's not about that. It's actually being. They could actually just damage. Anyone could damage anything right now with security. Yeah, like people can just shut down stuff just like that if they want to. Like that's the bit disinformation as well. Like with deep fakes, all this stuff is like. Well, that's a whole podcast on this one question, really. Yeah,
it really is. It's very true. I know from a cybersecurity perspective, and I know the intelligence that's been gained out there, and seeing some of that in Canada, right, with organizations in telecom that I've worked with, right. it's quite staggering, and it's really quite, you know, you wouldn't think that the direct, like, China population is being driven in ways that they're actually mandated to do a certain amount of hacking, that they're mandated to do a certain amount of time put in online to do these things. And it's pressed right to the family level, right? That they'll be threatened, and there'll be, you know, different things like that. So there is definitely intel all over on Russia, China. You know, you look at it, there's concerns for sure.
Yeah, and many other countries as well.
Oh,
right?
yeah, like that's just a few of them.
Yeah,
there are
yeah.
many others. Yeah.
Excuse me. So I think we should get on to number 2, yeah, which is I know I've titled it Europe, right? But, like, you know, because I've got this fact, I found this fact which was quite interesting from the IDC, yeah, and in 2020, European organizations are going to spend over 271 billion on US dollars, right, on digital transformation, but only 16% are going to actually deliver revenue streams. And obviously these figures are probably going to be global. I don't see that being any different probably in America. It may differ a little bit, but the question I have is, like, why? So who's most eager to answer this?
Can I quickly? And I'll
yeah.
I won't take all the screen time, but
all right.
You know what? You know, when you talk about that, people don't understand. That's a typical report that I would read and go, "What a load of old rubbish!" Right?
Right.
And I'll tell you why. For a couple of reasons. First reason is that, you know, they obviously haven't got the facts right, because a lot of the digital transformation will not just be to leap ahead, it's actually to create, you know, to rise up their technology just to level the playing field, right?
Right.
So there's a load of OPEX costs, right, that they're going to lump
Right.
in there by changing the infrastructure, the way they work, and that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a few revenue streams off the back of it.
Yeah.
Once they've transformed digitally, I get that.
Right.
But I think it'll be more than 16%.
Yeah, I think you're right. And and the brand value, like, how do you measure brand value? Like, all these companies say they can, but, like, customer experience, all that stuff. Yeah. Tony?
Yeah, those are the things you can't really put a hard number on, right? You can't put a hard ROI, and you can't really gauge everything that they're going to do in that digital transformation project, right?
Yeah.
They may make things much more efficient. Maybe it might be a whole customer experience, right, that is improved. And that's not really weighted by a revenue stream increase. It just may be by more customers having better service and being happier with it. And longer term, you'll see some improvements, right?
Yeah.
I also think too that it's from some of my chats out there and really looking at emerging tech and how it's being adopted, right? I think there's some issue around really, and my first comment to this was, maybe that's the actual percentage that get it right. We all know how IT projects go, right?
Very good point. That's a good point.
That was my first thought, yeah. But really, I do think that there is a big shift in just how to deploy an artificial intelligence project that goes outside of the norm. We all know that technology to date has been so historically siloed, right?
No.
It might be one department, and they're going to, I'm putting in, like, let's use Salesforce as an example, right? IT didn't want to put it on their servers, or, had some disagreement. They go outside of IT, they bring it in, they put in Salesforce, put everything through, right? But at the end of the day, they're only doing it from their own vein, their own department, right? And I think really the challenge is you got to back up, and it's really a true collaboration, and you got to go through that conflict. You got to go through all those different points, and then you see more value. And I think it's early days, right? Like there's still a lot of ground to make, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Sarji, you'll have a lot to say.
What do you think then, Sarji?
Economic genius.
Yeah, actually, I just lose my sleep on these topics. Can't stop pondering on these. I believe the disconnect is the way we calculate ROI. That's the gist of it. The financial intelligence in the technology community is almost zero. I would say that. I mean, I would just say that. Like, people don't know how to count ROI, depreciation, and that is not science, by the way. That's an art. And there's a good book on that. It's called, there are quite a few, but it's if you pick a book called Financial Intelligence, it tells you like how you can use some financial engineering while you're doing core engineering. So they go hand in hand. So if you start expecting direct ROI of like what you used to do in the past, like, or you put these 10 servers in your data center and you're like using those like right now, and then you're reaping benefits of that, or you can connect like 4,000 cell phones to it, right? Stuff like that. That doesn't work anymore. We are re-architecting the whole stack, if you will. So it is like putting roads in a newer city, in a newer part of the city. It's like that. Right. So what's the ROI for road or hospital or an airport? Like it's infrastructure we are building. So actually, I just tweeted about like I was thinking about this when you approached in the morning. Like, we're going to talk about this. There's a fixed fee we have to pay up front. A fixed like it's an investment, right? Yeah. To go from capex to opex. That's what we're doing actually. The digital transformation is more about that, like micro chunking of services and making it more like smaller and investments and quick iteration and stuff like that. So we have to spend a lot on migrating our old systems to the newer systems, and that migration has costs associated with that. Yeah. And that cost, people say, okay, if I spend like 5 million now, actually, I don't see any return on that for 4 years. That's fine. Exactly. Actually, we have to prolong our ROI sort of bands, if you will, to see that. Like, we cannot use the old formulas for new world. That's what I'm trying to say.
Very good.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
There's a famous like a quote from Gary. Gary, he's from New York. He said, like, what is the ROI of your mom? Actually, if you just Google it, you will find like 3-4 minutes video. Like, what is ROI of your mom? Like he tries to make the point, like, you cannot measure everything in numbers.
Exactly.
Your mom taught you how to walk and all that stuff, like, like, and that's ethics. I mean, she told you, and that your brand is because of her, stuff like that, right?
You know what? Yeah. Sorry, Tony. I just want to say this, right? I think we're going through this massive change, more bigger than what anybody can understand, unless you're old enough to look back, right? What's happened, and I think it's a fundamental culture change that we're not grasping. Is the fact that up until about 20 years ago, maybe even less than that, we relied on technology to just be the necessary evil, right? We have to have it. It's got to run. We've got to have some of it, right? And it was always given that it wasn't a profit-making center, right? This is technology that you need to have, like an OPEX, to run your business, right? Now, people see technology as the innovation to generate business, right? So, but the culture hasn't changed, right? So you've got the culture inside. I don't want to spend that much money on technology, and but the innovation has changed, right, with the tech. So I don't think until people get it at a mid-tier exec level that actually it's the culture has shifted now, and it can generate business for you and can push your business forward. It should.
Yeah.
Till they get that, I don't think people aren't going to think much more about nice to have show pony projects that go, they're doing it, so I'll do it.
Yeah.
The biggest example. The biggest example is this. The biggest example is like people are still doing TV ads or the banner ads like on the side of the freeways, right? Nobody freaking looks at that. Everybody's looking at these, right? Everybody's looking here. Right, on mobile, and then people are still burning a lot of cash, marketers, right? So it's just one example. I mean, things have changed under our sort of nose, and we are so immune to it, we don't see it. If you pull back and see like what has changed, it's a drastic change.
You got to take a 20,000-foot view of it. You really do, because you got to back away and kind of see it. And Sarbjeet, what you were saying really resonated with me. When you're working on projects that evolve around a cybersecurity implementation or bringing in some consulting or putting in some solutions around that, right? And CFOs will always get to that, where's the ROI? Well, it's like insurance, right? Do you really see the ROI in insurance? No, but you better have it.
Very
right?
true, very true. But also, it's down a lot of CEOs, right? I mean, I know quite a lot of people that implement AI systems, yeah, and like industrial AI, right? So like sensors, Internet of Things, industrial Internet of Things, that kind of stuff. And like they get asked by the CEO, I need AI, right? And the guy's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, just give me AI, like I want it. And he's like,
give me a mauve, I'll take
like
it.
I
mauve.
want it.
Yeah.
That's just it, right? But it makes me laugh because then he turns around, he says, well, for 2 years, that's going to put up your costs, yeah, maybe 3 years, because people need training around it. Then this, we need to implement it. We need to pay for the software. We need to pay for the analysis, yeah. And then like, oh, but that's going to make my costs go up, yeah. It's kind of the short-term thing, yeah. So I think, yeah, I agree. Measuring this is a case by case basis, right?
I tell you, it comes back to culture, guys. Right? Once they get it, there's not a penny in the world that they wouldn't spend to get what they want, right?
Yeah.
But they don't see the justification for it, right?
Yeah.
But they'll put little budget pools of money to show pony projects. Oh yeah, we're looking into AI. Yeah, we're looking into having our own blockchain environment for our distribution chain. Yeah. Whether they do it or not is irrelevant. They're just saying that, right? They're not taking it seriously enough.
Yeah. I agree.
You make a really good point, Neil.
Yeah.
Like it's a big challenge out there that they're really running after tech just because it's the thing to do.
Yeah.
Where you really see companies that are being successful with it is that back up and really look at what value are they looking to drive with AI.
Yeah.
Whether that be like an actual economic value or whether that be some other kind of perceived value, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's a combination of two. If you just look for value, people tend to see value as money, right? Like how much I will make at the end, right? Or that's how they drive that at the end of the day. But it's chicken and egg problem. Like you will not get that value if you don't invest. So you have to take the risk of investing into certain things without even seeing if what value I will get. So most of the time you will hear from all the successful companies, like they took many bets and some failed and some succeeded.
I mean,
like many failed actually.
But I mean, look at the lack of cybersecurity, guys, that people.
Oh.
Totally.
That's a whole long conversation.
Could we not even see this coming?
We're not,
and visible.
And they're going to do it again, just like with cloud. They're going to do it again.
But look, but I've got to get this last question,
and then we'll think about securing it afterwards, right?
Neil,
pull back to cybersecurity.
Come on, we're going to quickly do this last question because Sarjeet's got to go. Yeah.
All right.
So,
all right, Captain.
By 2025, yeah. This is the latest statistics. Yeah, 60% of European organizations are going to modernize their core IT leveraging cloud. Yeah, resulting in a 25% business productivity improvement. So what I'm thinking, I just want to know quickly, yeah, like one thing from each of you, what are they going to benefit from the most in the short term? Neil, you want to go first?
I would say that they actually recoup a lot of operational costs by automating a lot of the tech. That's one thing I will see with that, right? So they're going to invest heavily, like you said, 60%. We're going to invest core IT, cloud connectivity, cloud storage infrastructure. They're going to push as much as they can to outsource and automate to recoup that benefit. I don't see it as a revenue generator. I think it's more of a cost-saving exercise, really.
Okay. What do you think, Sarjeet?
I think I agree with like mostly it will be more operational efficiencies, but at the same time, I think some part of that money, or you mentioned the percentage there, like what they're spending, I think that will go towards the data utilization, and they will start leveraging data for customer experience, and that's where the like knowing more about your customer, where they are, what devices they are on, like where else they're going, and like intelligence around customer, and then this feedback, it kind of makes well feedback loops, and that's where I think most of the dollars are going.
Okay,
especially the data democratization and leveraging that data around your customers, which was never tapped to an extent to which it can be tapped.
right. So that's the productivity improvement, yeah, around the customer. Yeah, that I was thinking this a similar thing. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I agree too with both Neil and Sarbjeet. They certainly make some valid points. I think too that there's some advantages that can be gained, and this is just a recommendation for people looking at this cloud migration. Is I recommend managed security. Like that is going to leverage your deployment way more. You're going to get way better traction. You're going to have a lot better actual productivity improvement and value added, right? I think that's a big push. I think some other things that you're going to see, what I see in a telecommunications world, right, is you're going to see much more multi-cloud, right? You're going to see, okay, I'm using, instances here on Amazon or here on Google or here on Oracle, right? And you're going to see a better coordination. I see requests, and I'm working with bringing into market more utilization of multi-cloud connect and how that's going to put efficiencies in to utilize that, right? I think other things that you're going to see that's going to do productivity improvement, you're seeing some of it already, is cloud's been deployed, and then you hear all these things about overspend on cloud. Well, primarily that's because of how cloud is deployed, and if you're not putting efficiency tools in to manage that cloud, right? Yeah. So I'll give you an example of a Canadian organization I'm familiar with, is Densify, right? So they have embedded AI cloud technology that better manages your overall public cloud, right? And I mean, all of you know about this, right?
Is that a plug or a real life study you're doing, right?
Yeah. Well, that's debatable, right?
It's a soft style. We don't need to worry, but we don't need to worry.
Where's my hat? I didn't know we were supposed to have hats.
Look, I'm sorry. Look, this is a very special hat here. Sorry.
Yeah. No, anyhow, I thought it was safe. I thought it was safe that you had some inside knowledge.
Tony's got some densified baseball caps under his desk.
But the thing is, we don't need to rush to plug anything yet. I think we're gonna talk more, guys. Yeah, over the coming weeks and months. I think we should certainly do one of these every month, and let's just do one a month. And then if we decide we want to do one every week, we do one every week. But we start off with once a month, and then we just have a good conversation. Yeah, because people need to listen to this, because I think there's so much to keep up with. I mean, I know CEOs of a lot of companies, and, they say to me that, they hire people to keep up to speed with technology. Yeah. And we've got 4 people here talking about technology. People are going to benefit a lot from this. And I think,
4 experts.
Well,
we are, we've been learning about all this stuff, right? And
actually, I think we are collectively much better than individually. So I think that let's take this conversation to Twitter, LinkedIn, posts and stuff like that, and comment on it, and let's learn from each other. I think that's where the beauty lies, and we are here to learn from each other.
Totally agree.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thanks, Nathaniel. You're doing great, Nathaniel. Thanks for inviting me. Actually, I have to run at the top of the hour. Actually, I have a meeting. It's a very important meeting for me to go to. So you guys can continue. I have to bail out. Thank you, guys.
Hey, thanks so much. Good seeing you, Sarbjeet. Yeah.
All right.
I was going to put a wallet joke in before Sarbjeet left, but I've run out of time.
Thanks for listening. Please make sure you share this episode with your friends and business connections too. And don't forget to drop us a review wherever you listen. Thank you.